project preparation and de-risking. International capital is certainly not scarce, but it is cautious. It moves towards countries with credible de-risked project pipelines. So a project preparation facility for Pakistan focused on renewable energy, e-mobility, water security, as well as circular economy solutions could potentially bridge this gap. Combined with credit guarantees, first loss tranches, and concessional blending, such a facility could turn intent into investments. So my question to you would be, what institutional anchor or coalition could host such a facility, and how might it link with provincial governments to generate a credible, diversified project pipeline by COP30? And then finally, what I would ask you to consider is the country platform approach. Climate finance in Pakistan remains dispersed. We've been at a number of panels this morning where different ministries have different views, but there's a need to eliminate these siloed structures and look at a more cohesive framework for climate finance in this country. So a unified country platform could reduce fragmentation and signal accountability. And such a platform, if it's nationally owned, could A, embed adaptation priorities into core development planning. B, it could align national strategies with provincial implementation. And C, coordinate development partners and private investors through shared data and standards. So again, the impulse for the discussion would be, how can existing structures, and starting from the Ministry of Planning, Development and Special Initiatives, the State Bank, the MOCC and or the Climate Change Authority, coordinate to design a country platform that is both inclusive and operational. Another dimension to consider is the debt resilience nexus. And this is essentially the debt resilience relationship, because in 2024, external debt payments in the 50 most climate vulnerable countries averaged 15.5% of government revenue. So this fiscal squeeze constrains resilient spending and limits the uptake of concessional loans. For Pakistan, the discussion is no longer just about how much finance, but the discussion is rather what kind of finance? How will we balance grants, concessional loans, blended structures to avoid debt distress? How will Pakistan expand non-debt instruments like guarantees and equity co-investments? And how do we integrate climate resilient debt clauses and catastrophe-linked instruments into future borrowing? So these are all very pragmatic design-level choices, not negotiations. It's not about generosity, but how financial architecture can protect both creditors as well as communities. Pakistan has made considerable progress with carbon markets, but the question now is, how do we link these carbon markets to adaptation finance? The carbon market policy guidelines are operational. And the next question is value capture. How can the revenues from mitigation activities, energy efficiency, reforestation, renewables flow back into adaptation and local resilience? Now, a transparent mechanism that links Article 6 transactions to community adaptation and just transition investments can create both credibility as well as co-benefits. So my question to you, rather my challenge to you would be, how might Pakistan's carbon market governance integrate adaptation metrics? We know that the global goal on adaptation has put forward 100 metrics. How can we ensure that every ton reduced also builds resilience? And then finally, the space between Baku and Belem has not been an interlude. It has been what many considered an implementation phase. And for development partners like ourselves, and German Development Cooperation has been very active in this space, the task has been to support institutional readiness, not only through the finance that the bilateral cooperation provides, but through the knowledge, tools, and systems reform. For policymakers and financial institutions like yourself, the task is to move from fragmented instruments to an integrated, resilient finance ecosystem. But perhaps the most valuable outcome of this dialogue would be to leave this room with clarity on where coordination needs to happen, what can be achieved, and this in itself would be a strong signal of momentum and a powerful message to carry to Belem. With that, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Sobia, and very insightful remarks, especially how we can balance the financial architecture from COP29 to COP30, and what are our preparedness at Pakistan, and what we are taking it from Pakistan to COP30, and what sort of pledges we are doing this time, and how much we are prepared in terms of financial architecture, concessional loans, balancing it. So getting more knowledge and getting more into debate and dive into that, I would request Dr. Khalid Waleed for the scene setting remarks from STPI. Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Saleha. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Uh, my remarks would be they're written and they would be longish. I'm discussing three journeys. First is this Baku to Belem. Second is that is what I'm going to take from Islamabad to Belem tonight. And third, which is I am going to speak, is Washington to Belem. And Washington to Belem is from Washington consensus to Belem consensus. Uh, just to build a context, in the late 20th century, we witnessed the rise of policy orthodoxy that we know as Washington consensus. It was coined by John Williamson in 1989. It outlined 10 prescriptions for global macroeconomic landscape. It was fiscal discipline, reallocation of public spendings, tax reforms, liberal interest rates, competitive exchange rates, trade liberalization, foreign direct investment, privatization, deregulation, and importantly, property rights. These 10 points became the structural adjustment template that IMF and World Bank they used across Latin America, Asia, and Africa. The Washington Consensus aimed to restore the macroeconomic stability and market efficiency, but it often neglected equity, environmental sustainability, and long-term resilience. Its technocratic solution stabilized the economy, but sometimes hollowed out the social systems and natural capital. In particular, in Latin America, the Washington Consensus resulted in socio-economic exclusion and what we say weakening of trade unions, just like we see in these troubling times, world disorder, particularly in terms of trade tariffs and barriers, and sparking waves of social unrest across the region. As the world faces the planetary crisis of climate change, a new consensus must emerge, one that does not merely stabilize the economy, but sustain ecosystem and societies as well. This is what a Belem consensus should look like. It should have biodiversity at the helm of it. It should have environmental integrity, social inequality, environmental equality at the heart of it. So these are 10 points that how we can make Washington consensus a climate smart consensus emerging from Belem. Firstly, the Belem consensus should begin with ecological fiscal discipline. The Washington era emphasized cutting deficits. Belem should redefine fiscal prudence as a climate prudence. Government must now ensure that public budgets they internalize environmental costs, phase out fossil fuel subsidies in a way that is socially equitable, and redirect fiscal space towards renewable energy, adaptation, infrastructure, and climate resilient livelihood. Second, public spending must be reprioritized toward resilience and justice, whereas the Washington Consensus encouraged spending cuts and efficiency. The Belem framework should urge a reallocation toward public goods that enhance adaptive capacity education for green skills, healthcare for climate sensitive population, and resilient urban and rural infrastructures. The state's role is not to withdraw, but to redeploy resources strategically where market fails to account for equity and intergenerational justice, particularly for developing countries like Pakistan, where flood erode entire year's saving just like we saw in 2022 floods. So if the savings are being eroded by floods and natural disasters, population, just like 60% young population in Pakistan, they would not have anything to consume or anything to uh, in their dis-saving years in the entire retirement life. Third, very important is the tax and revenue system. As we have seen in Pakistan, resilience and sustainability facility that we signed under IMF, it has carbon taxation in terms of carbon levy. It should be recycled in a way that it creates the engine of climate justice. Instead of focusing narrowly on broadening tax bases, government should integrate carbon pricing, remove regressive fuel subsidies, but in a way that we recycle it for equitable justice, equitable climate justice. Fourth is financial system must recognize the true cost of carbon and value of resilience. While the Washington Doctrine called for market-determined interest rate, the Belem approach should acknowledge the market alone misprice climate risk. We need to add societal cost to it. That is very important. Fifth is exchange rate policies must internalize environmental value as well. Particularly, we are living in the era of carbon border adjustment mechanism, where there are climate smart trade barriers for those who have manufacturing process that is carbon intensive. So we need to again look into into the recycling of CBAM revenues, how they are going to be rechanneled to global south from global north. That must be at the center of it. Sixthly, trade liberalization must be climate conditional and justice oriented. Again, CBAM's point that if there are climate smart restrictions on trade in terms of CBAM certificates and other restrictions, the justice should be at the center, and the revenues should be recycled to the global south to ensure climate justice. Seventh, foreign direct investment should flow towards climate compatible sectors under social safeguards. Particularly, we have seen that State Bank of Pakistan has come up with the green taxonomy document. We need to make sure that how we are making it using it for efficient market mechanisms and reorienting investment to greener sector. And then we need to also ensure that it is connected with local communities and local indigenous businesses as well. Eighth, public and private sector must co-create the just transition. Privatization, it is the hallmark of it was the hallmark of Washington consensus, must give way to a more balanced partnership model. What we propose from STPI's platform is it should not be public-private partnership model. It should be public-private people partnership model, where people should be the center of it, so that we can bring another P into it, and that is planet. So yeah, I am copying your remarks. Ninthly, regulation must flip its compass from liberating the green, constraining the gray. The Washington consensus called for deregulation in the name of efficiency. The Belem consensus should call for smart regulation, removing bureaucratic barriers to renewables, clean tech, circular economy enterprises. Particularly that we see that in Pakistan, our developing countries context, there are regulations that sort of constrain these things. Lastly, the concept of rights must expand from property to planet. Where Washington placed faith in securing property rights, I think there should be planetary rights as well, where we give property rights to clean air, to river water, to oceanic life, land, water, forest, and atmosphere. They are not merely assets but shared inheritances. The right of indigenous people, local community, and future generation must be protected within law and policy, ensuring that climate justice is not an afterthought, but the organizing principle of governance. So these are 10 things that I think should be the hallmark of Belem consensus. Looking forward to an insightful discussion on points that Sobia has made very eloquently, and this longish sort of scene setting. Thank you so much. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Khalid, and thank you for so many P's: P for Pakistan, P for pledge, and P for Pakistan as well. So looking forward, now we have another P, which is presentation. So I'm and just requesting Hamza to present the presentation. Yeah. Before going into the panel discussion, as we have speakers and with us, Mr. Faisal Shafat, Ms. Sobia Bekar, Honorable Qazi Saab, and also from Bank of Punjab representation, and the panel will be chairing by Ms. Dr. Nasfisa Shah at the end of the session. So before going into that, so what does the from Baku to Belem means the road ahead for Pakistan climate finance architecture? So this is we are sort of setting the global climate finance architecture between COP 29 at Baku 2024 and COP 30 at Belem 2025. It is designed for decision makers, negotiations, and finance sector leaders who need to align Pakistan domestic climate policies with evolving global commitments and financial mechanism. As we can see that Pakistan is among the top 10 vulnerable countries. We have so much reliance on fossil fuel, and there is a rising social vulnerability in that context as well. Also, Pakistan is experiencing the heat waves, severe heat waves, the droughts, the forest fires, the glaciers are melting because of the higher temperature has been experiencing in the past couple of years and past months, exceeded up to 50 degrees centigrade. So it has created a lot of challenges within Pakistan, adaptation and mitigation needs, and that's what is needed for that is the climate finance architecture within that context, especially when we have NDCs 3.0, which has estimated that we need $532 billion in terms of financial support. So for the global context, we can see that we have a new collective quantified goal, which raised 1.3 trillion per year by 2035, which was previously $100 billion goal. So the last year that pledge was not met, and that was the issue with the issue and challenge for the developing countries. Also, adaptation finance commitments, 50% of the future flows must go to adaptation, which is an essential win for the developing countries. Loss and damage fund operationalization with USD 700 billion, but still it is underfunded, and MDB reforms is needed, especially to unlock the $1 billion investment for the capital reforms, and debt for climate swaps for pilot projects, including in Pakistan, redirecting debt repayments to climate action. So such type of interventions are needed for the financial groundwork within the COP 30 Belem 2025 that can turn the pledges into measurable and deliverable financial architecture. Next, please. So Global South demands for the equity and debate that they need climate justice for simplified access. Approval times for funds like GCF and GEF is 18 to 24 months, which are too slow. So grant-based financing in that context is 70% of the existing public climate finance, which is loan-based basically, and adding more debt for the developing countries. And fair burden sharing must be needed, especially the Global South contributes, like we are saying, the less than 20% of emissions, but bears 75% of the losses. So we need fair burden sharing in that context as well. Technology transfer is a must for the Global Technology Partnership Framework, and we need it by 2026. So such type of interventions need a narrative that create equity and entitlement with the polluters must pay principle. So that is the condition that the Global South could demand. Now, for the case of countries, 2025 was the year of NDC's commitment, and Pakistan was among one of the countries that has aligned with the Paris, and they have also presented their NDC 3.0, in which 50% of emission reduction by 2035 was the target set, and 17% is estimated to be done with the domestic resources, financial resources, while the 33% could be done through the conditional or foreign support. So the total financing need, which is actually mentioned in the NDC 3.0, is USD 565.7 billion over 2025 to 2035. Adaptation priorities are agriculture, water, health, disaster resilience, urban planning, and we need integrated tools such as Pakistan Green Taxonomy is there, climate budget tagging we need, and project preparation facility for bankable projects we need for that as well. So challenges for the developing economies are institutional weakness, data MRV reporting. Mostly the developing countries are lacking in that capacity. Also, the crippling financial gaps is also a major hurdle in implementing the NDCs, in implementing or meeting the targets of mitigation and adaptation, and also limited technical capacity in terms of MRVs, in terms of data collection and integrated and inclusive policy approach that is required for the developing countries to meet the NDCs target. So if you look at the financial landscape, we can see that total funding need is 152 billion, which is 44% for adaptation, and for mitigation is 19.6 billion. So these are the financial landscape that the domestic investment inflows are needed in terms of PSDP, total climate financing. This is the overall picture that Pakistan is currently have. And in terms of provincial climate financial statistics, we can see that NDC through in 2024 NDC investment plan, we can see the total public funding was 144 million across 268 climate relevant projects. So Punjab 49.2 million, which was accounted for 64 projects. Sindh was 19.3 million, which is 58 projects, and KPK 23 million, which is 170, which is in energy specifically 175 million in ADP allocation projects. So Balochistan 179 million USD is required for the NDC investment plan. So total public funding for the climate relevant projects for 2022-23 was 141.9 million across 268 projects, including insufficient prioritization within provincial annual development plans. So this is the overall picture of the provincial landscape. And when we're looking at the Pakistan climate financial architecture, we can see that there is a lack of coordination, which we are mostly talking about different integrities, different ministries in between the federal and the provincial setup as well. So that need to be streamlined in that context as well. Also, fiscal and regulatory enablers must be developed and must be implemented, and also access to entities and implement the development financial projects that is needed for the case of Pakistan. And these issues could be handled, and we will listen more from the experts that what sort of challenges we need to tackle, and also what are the demands from the global north and versus global south, that how we can manage and maintain equity and responsibility among the climate commitments, among the per capita emissions, also among the climate finance flows. It's not be mobilization, it must be financial, not in terms of debts or loans, it must be in forms of grants. So such type of interventions are needed from the global north as well. So this panel would also create a knowledge forum for the equity and responsibility for the climate finance architecture for the COP30. So we need to align our NDCs with the realistic targets, that what we can do and what we need and what sort of support we need from the developed countries, and also how we can strengthen our financial readiness and MRV system through development partners or through international partners, and how we can develop a Pakistan climate investment plan, and how we can make the pipeline for the bankable projects, especially when we're talking about the carbon markets. Or we need a readiness, we need a plan for the bankable projects, what are the prioritized sectors in that context as well. So these are some of the climate pillars and climate financial architecture that Pakistan must exist, and most of the things have been discussed by Ms. Sobia and Dr. Khalid as well. Now I would start the panel. So starting with the Faisal Shafat Saab from the State Bank of Pakistan. So, sir, how is State Bank of Pakistan is embedding climate risks testing taxonomy based lending criteria and blended finance models into regulations and enable bankable projects for the Paris aligned transactions or Paris aligned commitments we have?
Thank you, Salia. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to all the participants. And I am really grateful for being the part of this panel. As far as State Bank is concerned, again, I will start from the green banking guidelines that have been developed with the help of the GIZ. Then we have developed ESRM implementation manual with the help of the IFC and the green taxonomy with this, in collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Change and with the support of the World Bank. Having said that, if we talk about GBGs, if we talk about ESRM manual, those guidelines and that manual is basically we have advised banks, or rather encouraged banks to adopt those guidelines to implement that ESRM implementation manual. And majority of the banks have, developed their green banking policies, have institutionalized the governance structure that had been given in the GBGs and as well as given in the ESRM manual. And now the banks have also started screening the transactions based on the tools given or the checklists given in the ESRM implementation manual. And now we have developed green taxonomy, which basically identifies which truly is green and which is not green. And it basically identified specific economic activities that can be classified as green, that can be classified as a amber category. The economic activities which are basically on the transition path, but that can be financed by the banking industry. So, and now again, we are in the process of developing a regulatory framework for the sustainable finance for the banking industry in line with the BCBS principles of climate-related financial risk. And under these guidelines, we will be advising banks to develop an oversight function for the identification, for measurement, and for monitoring the climate risk specifically. So similarly, we will also be advising banks to establish internal control framework. We will also be advising the banking industry to institutionalize the risk management process in their credit underwritings for the credit risk, for the market risk, as well as for the operational risk. And we will also be advising banks to assess their capital adequacy and liquidity adequacy in line with the BCBS principles. And further, those guidelines will also be will also define the stress testing mechanisms relating to the climate risk, not only for the central bank but also for the commercial banks as well. So from the microprudential sides and from the macroprudential sides, we will be covering these elements. And what I believe with the passage of time, obviously it will take some time. You see, the European Union taxonomy was basically issued in the year 2019, and now they are at a stage where they are developing, they are implementing it, and they are making it a mandatory. They are making it mandatory for the industry as well. So these are the few highlights that through which we are basically trying to institutionalize the assessment of the climate risk in the banking industry. And obviously, banks would be developing green finance products in line with these regulations. And another important factor is that we are also working in the development of the supervisory framework to assess the climate risk. And that will be, that will become the part of the supervisory ratings of the commercial banks. That will basically push banks to consider climate risk, to assess climate risk, and accordingly develop and promote the climate-friendly economic activities. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for Faisal Saab. And yes, the green taxonomy is already there, and I think the challenge we have is the implementation. How we can, make it more conducive for all the sectors to make it implementable in the specific sectors. So this is the challenge. We will come back to you later. And before coming to Bisobia, I would request, we wanted to gain the knowledge from the banking sector. We have Mr. Arsalan Mohammad Iqbal, who is the Chief Risk Officer, Bank of Punjab. Sir, as you listened from the State Bank of Pakistan, that the green taxonomy, the guidelines are there, but there is a challenge that we have implementation challenges, that how we can implement it. So what is the perspective of Pakistan Banking Association in that context? Like what regulators or commercial banks can do in that context to build institutional capacity, especially when we're in the panel of climate aligned lending and project evaluation. And also COP29 reaffirmed that concessional finances alone will not be enough in that context. So what practical steps can the banking association can take in that context to make a feasible environment for the crowd and private and international capital through blended finances mechanism or co-financing with MDBs? Yeah, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here to be part of this August forum. Very relevant questions you've asked, and the panel and this session is addressing some pertinent points that the country as a whole is facing today. If somebody, and people do ask me, and what is the biggest risk in the future for your bank or for your organization as a chief risk officer? So I always say it's climate risk. So climate risk for Pakistan as a country, and the banking sector in particular is a key challenge for the future. We've seen in 2022, the floods that devastated the country, and we, bore losses of billions of dollars. And in 2022, at least some of us were saying that it's happened, and it'll be at least 10 years or 8 years that this happens again. But unfortunately, again this year we've seen devastating floods, and thank God not that scale of disaster, but still the floods were very devastating. So PBA is working very closely with the State Bank of Pakistan to answer your question, and the member banks to operationalize instruments such as the Green Taxonomy and Climate Risk Guidelines. We have joint working groups and technical consultations in which PBA is helping to align regulatory frameworks with practical banking operations. It has collaborated with development partners like the State Bank of Pakistan, the IFC, and the World Bank to deliver training programs for the green banking guidelines, the implementation of ESRM manual, its framework, the toolkit, the project evaluation checklists, so on and so forth. So we developed a comprehensive set of framework to first assess this risk and then try to mitigate it in, assessing financing for climate-driven projects. PB is also supporting the adoption of the green taxonomy by standardizing definitions for green activities, which enable consistent credit appraisal and disclosure practices. While implementation remains uneven and it's obvious because of capacity and data gaps, these coordinated initiatives are steadily building institutional readiness across the sector. And these are more or less in line with State Bank's green banking guidelines, the ESRM manual, and the Pakistan Green Taxonomy. Following COP29, it is a widely known fact that we recognize that concessional finance alone cannot meet Pakistan's climate investment needs. Banks across the country can play a pivotal role by leveraging blended finance, combining concessional, commercial, and impact capital to attract private and international investors, multilateral donors, MDBs, and so on and so forth. But in order to implement and invite investment, we have to look at two aspects in a very distinct fashion. Number one is the supply side, which are the banks, and the other side is the demand side, which is the industry at large, which are the consumers, which is the government, which are regulatory bodies, so on and so forth. There has to be demand for something to be supplied. So, for example, you've all seen in Pakistan the last 10 years that there was for whatever reason there was a surge of solar electricity generation at the consumer level. I'm not talking about large industrial units, but I'm talking at the consumer level. Why did that happen? Because there was a demand for it. How that demand was created is totally a different topic in which we can discuss. But the number one thing is to create demand for such products. Supply side, the banks are pretty much ready because of the push from the regulator, State Bank. We've created, green banking products. We've created risk frameworks to, adjudge and set criterion for, climate finance. We have the capacity. For example, BOP, if I can give an example, was the first and only bank to do Pakistan's first solar park financing. That was back in 2014. At that time, no other bank wanted or understood, what solar financing, entails, what are its, costs and benefits, what are the risks involved. But BOP did this financing, independently, solely, because even back then, 10 years ago, we realized that this is the future, and this alternate energy is going to be there. So, but there has to be some kind of demand for the banks to fulfill. If there is no demand from the market, the banks are unable to sell something which somebody doesn't want to buy. I'll give you an example, and very briefly, and then I'll close my talk. I meet with customers across the country, with large industries across the country, with textile manufacturers, with any kind of other large scale manufacturing units. The demand for green products or climate resilient activities is driven from their customers who are sitting outside Pakistan. For example, I know a few textile manufacturers whose customers are sitting in Europe, and they are demanding that by 2030 or 2029, the textile products that they want to buy has to be made by regenerative cotton, which is sustainable cotton. So this demand has not been created internally, has been created externally. So we are very happy as a business, as an economy to fulfill once the push is made towards us. But unfortunately, this push has to come within. It cannot we cannot just keep on waiting and relying on the international buyers to ask us to do something, because this, if somebody is asking us to do it today, so we know it's there tomorrow. That question, why don't we answer the question before it's even asked? So there is a lot of demand globally, and in order to meet that demand, probably we can create this kind of capacity within the country, which we already are, to cater to international buyers and to international businesses. Why not locally? So I leave that thought.
Thank you so much, Arslan Sahab. Very rightly, uh, yeah, very rightly highlighted that we need to create demand, but for that purpose, we need to create awareness among the internal consumers. So there's a demand from the textile sector that we need green textiles, but there's not a demand from the other sectors that we need in Pakistan green steel, we need green cement. So we need to create these demands, and I think that from that we made the bankable projects for the industries and for the organization as well. So moving forward, I will come, Mr. Fayaz Saab, after that, but I wanted to know that, please listen the Pakistan perspective, that what are the challenges we have and what sort of setting we have right now. So moving towards Ms. Sobia Becker. So ma'am, as we have listened that creating demand is the most effective strategy when we are talking about the bankable projects. So how the PGCEP helps in, especially when translating Pakistan taxonomy and green bond initiatives into scalable financial pipelines, and what sort of institutional readiness is needed to support the climate finance architecture from the development partners. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you very much. But first, can I just say, Arsalan, that was music to my ears. Thank you very much. This is very critical, because one of my mantras has always been that climate needs to become a business case. If we're going to redirect investments to greener sectors, there needs to be a business case. The people who are ready to finance or invest in fossil fuel power plants, for example, need to understand that they're looking at a stranded asset, and similarly, go to greener pasture. So this is very important, and this is something that the Bank of Punjab is also doing. And very pleased that Vakas, our Paris-aligned finance fellow, is also here. Thank you for joining. I would also like for my colleagues here to consider. I think we also need to have a sort of a paradigm shift. Arsalan highlighted very correctly so that right now the demand for sustainable textiles is a response to, for example, how the international marketplace is changing and the awareness amongst consumers there is growing. We need to have this sort of paradigm shift in country as well, where people realize that climate resilient development or climate resilient production is going to mean that your ecosystems are better preserved, that you're going to have more resources available for production, your health is going to be better, and the future of the people living in any particular area is also going to be better socially, economically, on every count. And I think this hasn't happened as yet, because the feeling generally is that if we have to update our NDC, it's more like, "Uff Allah, ye dobara karna hai," without kind of realizing that if you have strong climate resilient practices at home, you will be the first one to benefit, and then you can think about what it means for the Paris architecture and so on. Your question was regarding the climate finance architecture, the readiness, and we also heard from other colleagues, as well as colleagues in the morning, speaking about the importance of localized emissions factors. Now, having the perfect set of data in an imperfect world is an anomaly. This is not going to happen. We need to figure out what is the minimum possible standard of data that we can have to move forward, and then refine it as we move forward. What is the PAC Chairman Climate and Energy Partnership doing in this regard? We are strengthening the government's greenhouse gas inventorying abilities and capabilities so that improving the monitoring, reporting, and verification of greenhouse gas emissions. This is also a data set which ideally banks should also be able to access, so they should be able to get that. The Ministry of Climate Change should be a service provider to industry, and similarly industry can also report back on that data. We've produced climate smart agricultural investment plans which show that in a rapidly changing climate, where does, for example, investment in the agricultural sector need to be directed or redirected? Climate models are they're a public good. They've been developed and they are available for those who choose to access it. The second thing that we're doing is increasing the capacity of the partner institutions that we work with. We speak about bankable projects. Bankable projects are, it's not that easy to make bankable projects where you're going to be able to access climate finance. And where's the hook? The hook is again access to data. It's really understanding. So if I go to Arsalan and say, Arsalan, I want a car, I can't say, I owe you 10 million rupees, give me a car. He's going to need a lot of paperwork. So it's the same thing. I don't understand why people think they can go to the GCF, put in a 2-page proposal and get 10 million, $50 million. That's not going to happen. So an understanding that you need climate data for making these bankable projects, these have to be viable proposals which can show the backwards and forward linkages, whether it's an adaptation project or a mitigation project. We've been working with the Ministry of Climate Change. We've been working at the federal as well as the provincial level to develop this sort of climate finance readiness. And now we've been also working with the domestic financial ecosystem in order to increase their readiness and their capability, because you know that in addition to what Faisal was mentioning about the ESRM, and thank you for the green banking guidelines mentioned, really appreciate that. But in addition to the ESRM, the SECP has also made IFRS reporting mandatory. So, when you look at the system is coming together. And this is where we're building the capacity. And what Arsalan said is worth its weight in gold, that it's not, you cannot rely on international climate finance alone. You also have to unlock domestic climate finance in order for the system to do it. And this is where smart investments in industry or in any other area of economic activity are going to have long-term benefits. And my dear Khalid has left, but all the P's, and then the final P, prosperity and planet, this is where it comes in. I'll pause here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Sobia. And another P is the prosperity plan from Bangladesh as well, the climate prosperity plan. So, Fayaz Murshid Qazi Sahab, you have listened all the speakers from the Pakistan, and the COP is approaching, and COP29 was supposed to be the COP of the climate finance pledge, but that was not happened, and that was very disappointing for the developing countries, especially who are looking up for the climate finance to mobilize to be provided for the mitigation adaptation project as well. So what specific climate finance reforms that are there in Bangladesh, and what are the lessons that could you highlight for in the case of Pakistan, that how we can learn from the climate prosperity plan that you have, also the project experiences or project preparation you are doing, and what sort of regional south-south collaboration is needed when we are heading towards the COP30, that what we can take from the global south toward the global north. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm not sure if I'm capable enough to respond to all your questions, but please allow me to make some general remarks. I mean, I'm not a financial expert at all, so I'm kind of in an odd situation, but climate diplomacy, as we look at it, is of course of paramount importance for all our countries. Again, Mr. Khalid Walid has left the room, but yesterday at a session, he was suggesting that SARC be renamed as South Asia resilience to climate change or something of that sort. Immediately from the floor, there was some reservation expressed that no, we do not need to go down that pathway. But I think the spirit of his message is important, that yes, we are having difficulty in advancing regional cooperation or integration through the SAARC process. But climate change can certainly be one agenda where all South Asian countries can come together and do come together. I can assure you, I mean, having been to Glasgow, Sharm el-Sheikh, Baku, and some other places, that SAARC does not act as a negotiating platform, but our climate diplomacy policies very much align. I mean, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, we usually all speak with the same voice. There may be certain nuances in our respective approaches, but overall, in general, of course, the overwhelming priority is to ensure resilience to climate change. Now, talking about climate finance, probably you're aware, I mean, the Baku to Belem pathway or the roadmap is fresh off the oven, actually. It's just been released. It was the responsibility of the Azerbaijani and Brazilian presidencies together to come up with this document. I was trying to go through this very hefty document, but again, for someone illiterate in global finances like myself, it's not very easy to digest, but I can assure you that for financial experts like yourselves, there is a lot to unpack in that particular document. And this will probably be the focus of all the discussions going forward in Belem. Now, it was good to see some of the points that you have made, Saleha, in your presentation. Many of those issues are addressed in this roadmap document, especially for countries like us who have been crying hoarse for decades to bring added focus on adaptation. We know that the funding distribution, climate financing distribution between mitigation and adaptation continues to remain very, very lopsided. And again, it's a pet point that we continue to say that already with very minimal per capita emissions in countries like Pakistan or Bangladesh, there is a limit to how much we can mitigate. So the existential question for our people is adaptation. But again, to borrow from your point, to build a business case for adaptation is apparently very difficult. And that's where we do need the public sector financing, especially from international sources. I mean, it is probably something we have to accept that the private sector will not be very keen and forthcoming to invest in risk-free adaptation projects. And that is why international predictable increased climate financing from public sources is something that we need to keep talking about. Access, you have mentioned, you have talked about the timing, 18 to 25 months, but I wish that were the only issue. And some of the access-related challenges have already been mentioned. Pakistan is probably the 10th most vulnerable country. Bangladesh is touted as the 7th most vulnerable country. But many people get surprised when I tell them that there are only 2 organizations in Bangladesh that are eligible to access Green Climate Fund financing. So you project us as a vulnerable country, but then you allow only 2 of our organizations to access GCF funding. Don't you see the sheer irony of the situation? Absolutely. And that's where we actually need to build these climate financing pipelines domestically. Yes, I mean, I totally agree that on the demand side, there has to be more investment, but it's easier said than done. I know of 2 organizations, including BRAC, which has some footprints both in Pakistan, Afghanistan, and other countries. They have been trying to become eligible to access green financing, and they have very sound audit accountability practices. But even for them, this has proved to be difficult. So my request to all the financial experts around the table that please join your voices in trying to streamline some of these lending criteria. I know that it has to be stringent. There has to be certain standards that have to be complied with. But countries like us, we are simply not being able to access those financing, and we need to do something about that. When we talk to GCF and GF about this, they say that they have their own boards of governors who dictate their policies. So for them, as the operational arm, it's not easy for them to kind of talk about this. But that's where the roadmap probably comes in. I mean, we have to kind of push forward some of these issues. I totally agree with both my neighbors that, again, bankable projects, developing bankable projects. I mean, from the Foreign Office, we often get frustrated when we approach both our other ministries, agencies, or private sector entities that give us viable projects. We do not quite see that coming up. So there is a clear lack of competence or skills to develop those kind of projects. And I mean, that's probably one area where we need international capacity building support to go in so that we can come up with viable bankable projects that we can place to signal our readiness, to reduce transaction costs, to ensure risk-free financing, or to ensure scaling up at some point. But I would slightly, add a nuance to your point, sir. The private sector will always, of course, look at profit maximization, and they will, no matter how much we try to make them responsible for people and planet and so forth, that particular P will always remain on the forefront of their mind. And being a large ready-made garments producing country, we know for sure that unless the push had come from our European or North American buyers, probably our garments manufacturers and exporters wouldn't have rushed into ensuring compliance with some of these standards, because they know that by 2030, they would have to comply with these standards, not just use of cotton, but use of energy, use of water, use of, chemicals and all sorts of things. And some of them are actually heavily investing in some of these things because they would like to secure this market. So that's where probably the regulatory entities would have some role to play, how to bridge the gap between those who can lend the financing and those who can come up with the ideas for bankable projects. So a bit of mentoring or hand-holding so that we can bring these two sides closer to each other, understand each other better. The guidelines, taxonomy, all these are fantastic, but somehow the matchmaking is probably not quite happening in our context. And that's where we have to look into the European experience and other things. And that's probably the bright side of it, that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. A lot has been done in other contexts, and we can kind of learn from those things. I will make a bit of point about blended and innovative financing. Blended financing, again, these are things we hear a lot. And again, my quick glance at the roadmap document, there is a lot about blended and innovative financing. But as a non-expert, my 2 cents, that again, for blended financing to become viable, you need some money to be put from the public sector, and preferably at least as grants, and then probably some concessional support for MDBs or DFIs, and then perhaps the private sector would be coming forward. Just to expect that the private sector will respond to the need for financing without stress testing or de-risking the investment potentials, that is never going to happen. So at the end of the day, no matter how much we talk about involving the private sector, the importance of international public financing would not necessarily go away. Innovative financing, again, when I read these terminologies, I think they would be very unfamiliar to rather not so sophisticated financial systems like ourselves. Some of these innovative financing mechanisms would probably work in more advanced economies, but will they actually be replicable in our contexts as such? That is probably something we do need to look at. Yes, we are all, you asked me what Bangladesh is doing. We are also doing green bonds, orange bonds, and things like that, trying to comply with the green bond principles and so forth. But beyond those points, more sophisticated instruments Are we actually ready for absorbing even those kind of instruments? I mean, that's probably something that needs to be said. I have overshot my time. But thank you. And I think somebody talked about rights and justice. Absolutely. I mean, one thing that I would request everyone to keep in mind that this year, the International Court of Justice had done something groundbreaking for the first time. At the initiative of the small island developing countries, the International Court of Justice had given a verdict which does not have any teeth. It cannot be legally enforceable, but it can be used as a moral argument that advanced economies that are responsible for most of the carbon emissions do have a differentiated responsibility to put the money on the table. And that's why, together with 1.5 degrees centigrade, 1.3 trillion US dollars should be our mantras going forward up to 2035. I'll stop at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, very insightful remarks and very great interventions from your side. In the meanwhile, we are just going for the second round of questions. If Dr. Nafisa, if you wanted to have some interventions on COP30, or would you like to be part of that at the end of the session? You are muted if you unmute yourself. Yeah.
However the panel feels comfortable, I can wait it out and then, but I don't know how much time we have. I can wait it out for the second round.
Okay. Sure. Sure. Just we have one round of questions. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. So moving forward, Faisal Shafat Saab, as we are talking more about the bankable projects, so what's institutional reforms that you think are needed in case of Pakistan, or what are the capacity building needs that are needed? Yeah, I'm still on it.
Just want to say one or two things with regard to your question. Here we are talking about the business case. So it's not the business case only from the demand side. I mean, it's a business case from the supply side as well. Because climate risk is the financial risk. If the repayment capacity of your client or the borrower hurts on account of the climate risk, it will definitely impact your bottom line. So there is a need to, again, to create awareness among the bank clients. There is a need to develop, bankable financial products for your clients who have, high, who are facing higher climate risk, and there is a need to a bit innovative even within the given set of parameters. We can offer something to our existing clientele, such as, I give you an example. We have a facility which is known as LTFF. Under LTFF, we can finance captive power plants. And by captive power plant, it doesn't mean it has to be a fossil fuel plant. It could be a renewable energy plant as well. It could be a biomass plant as well. So this awareness can be created by the financial sector as well. Again, we have a risk sharing facility for the SME, for SMEs. That risk sharing facilities can also be used to finance climate related projects. So within the given set of parameters, we have something to offer to our clients. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Arslan Sahab, would you highlight any current or planned projects where Pakistan banks are experimenting for the first loss capital or credit guarantees to de-risk private investment in climate-related sectors, and also whether banks can transition from being passive conduit of green funding to active architects of credible climate-aligned financial system? And what does success look like for Pakistan banking industry by the time that world are moving towards the COP30, Belem? Yeah.
Yes, there are several initiatives in Pakistan where banks are, using guarantees or concessional on lending facilities. Just to, highlight to my esteemed colleague Faisal, and he probably knows this, that BOP is the only bank in the industry who has been able to obtain a on lending facility from a multilateral, from an international development financial institution of 50 million euro, which it is using to on lend, a climate finance project, multiple projects to be exact. So this is one aspect that the industry or BOP in particular as a responsibility is carrying out. Then the government of Pakistan, the Ministry of Climate Change, and the NCGCL, which is the National Credit Guarantee Company Limited, they've structured a guarantee program for up to 10 billion uh, in green finance to fund green financing, products and initiatives. While this 10 billion is a very small number, but it provides some kind of impetus to the entire cause. Under this program, NCGCL will guarantee, will provide a guarantee to cover loans and hybrid structures and equity investments, so on and so forth. And it's going to provide a first loss guarantee of probably, if I remember correctly, 10% of the portfolio. So that will allow leveraging this 100 billion into probably this 10 billion into multiples of 10. Then the government of Pakistan has also very recently come out with it's called Zarkhezi. It was earlier called, National Farmer Subsistence Finance Scheme. It is in collaboration with the State Bank of Pakistan. It is a digital collateral-free loan for small farmers. It has been launched by the State Bank. It is to develop, small-scale farmers meet production costs. It uses a completely digital portal for applications and provide loans for up to a certain limit for inputs like seeds, fertilizers, fuel, so on and so forth. A key feature of this financing facility is that at least 75% of the loan must be dispersed in kind, which means to the source, to ensure quality inputs are purchased. It is uncollateralized. There are no collateralized. There is no collateral for this. It is to cultivate up to 12.5 acres, which means small farmers, and the government provides a 10% first loss guarantee coverage to mitigate any kind of risk for default. In Punjab in particular, the government of Punjab has carried out a program in collaboration with BOP where BOP is providing small ticket size loans to farmers of small size land holding. We've already dispersed the first tranche of 75 billion, we've come full circle. The amount has been repaid back to us by so it has all been done digitally. It was a very key initiative, key ESG initiative of the bank, that the entire we financed 1 million consumers or agriculture or farmers. The 1 million is a very large number in a very small space of time of 1 year. We built this program. So there are multiple areas where the country as well as the industry is performing in this area. By the time we gather for Belem and for COP 30, success for Pakistan's banking industry would mean that it needs to evolve from passive recipients of concessional funds to active architects of a climate resilient financial system. And again, which brings me back to my earlier point, that we need to be self-driven and innovative. We need to, the bank should be able to independently structure and originate green projects, and guidance can be sought by the Pakistan Green Taxonomy. And we can integrate climate risk into credit and investment decisions. We can collaborate with multilateral development banks and climate funds, which would result in blended, finance structures. This would help de-risking and scalability as well. For BOP in particular, and other, financial institutions, this transformation is somewhat already reflected in the tangible outcomes that I've just, mentioned, and the increased share of, green assets in lending portfolio. By COP30, success will mean that Pakistani banks have been able to build these systems, create the required skill set, and have made partnerships with climate finance, mainstream and self-sustaining, multilateral donors across globally. So these are my 2 cents on this.
You so much. Thank you. And I think in the interest of time, if Ms. Sobia and Kazi Saab, if you wanted to have last interventions or any policy recommendations that could make, yeah, please. And then we will go towards the panels here. Yeah.
I also spoke a lot, but 2 things maybe. I mean, since there are so many financial experts here, one thing probably, I mean, again, I'm borrowing it from one of our own financial experts. Standardization of climate financing products. That is probably something that we need to work on collectively. Again, to borrow his words, that we had some one-hit wonders in North America or in Southeast Asia, but how to kind of make it coherent, relevant and streamlined so that other contexts like ours, we can also kind of borrow from those examples. I mean, some of those green bonds or other instruments, finance products that have proved to be successful, so that, as I was saying, I mean, we don't have to necessarily go through the same trial and error process. And again, since our colleague here was talking about innovation coming from within, so I was expressing some reservations about innovative financing, but can't we actually come up with our own innovative financing solutions rather than always looking at some borrowed Western models? I mean, after all, not to boast, but our region, we have come up with ideas like microfinance and social business and so forth. I mean, all these had mixed results, of course, but again, these are ideas that we had generated from this part of the world. Can we do something similar on innovative financing for climate change? Just again, my 2 cents. Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair. I heard the partnership, public-private people's partnership, you see. So I'm say, in alignment of that, I seek a right of speaking for a few minutes.
Sure.
Can I? Okay.
We just have 4 minutes.
I
I think we can catch up.
I'll consume only 2 to 3 minutes.
Catch up on the tea. So
जी?
we can catch up later on the tea. So it's fine with you.
नहीं, बहुत जरूरी है क्योंकि ये इन्हीं के ऊपर थोड़ा सा you see.
Sir, briefly,
My problem is that I speak a lot, but here I will speak the least because I am under sanctions, you see. So, cognizant of having sanctions, my, you see, thinking is that, I'm telling you, I'm also in research. My thinking is that we have been repeatedly talking about a word, bankable projects, climate related. I don't think this is the correct word, my personal opinion as a researcher. The word bankable is for the private sector investment oriented projects, you see. And probably this word, I think we, in the future should use it as workable or feasible in terms of such actions. Now, having said so, rightly the Bank of Punjab, you see, representative said that demand is created by the international buyers, not from here. It has to be considered whether we should be privy to that in creating a local demand or reconciliation or adjustments, you see. Why? I will just take another 1 minute. I have been to WTO right from the 1995. So WTO is a single package undertaking. If Caribbeans will not agree the Seattle failed, I was there. But over here, I think we must, NGOs in Pakistan and all that, I am also part of this NGO, must think that how we can influence in sort of proposing a system in which, like Dr. Khalid said, there should be some adjustment in both, you see. So what I personally believe that we must also work on those models, because if we totally are being dictated by those models of international buyers, probably I think it has to be done a lot. And finally, 10 seconds. Yesterday, Shairi Rahman brought a paper and she said that, look, in Pakistan, or I'm sorry, overall financing needs overall is from 386 to 586 billion US dollars. She said, the other one said, Harun was there, and Harun said, well, we should not wait for the checks to come. There will be no more checks. Why? In a reduced funding climate, and US staying away, probably I think we have to think how this public-private people's partnership can work. And I think I will stop here, though I would love to say more, but under sanctions, I just be disciplined person.
You have a lot of time after the panel, yeah. So any last interventions, Ms. Sobia, you have, and then we will go towards the panel chair. We would love to take the questions, but I think we are just left with short of times. You can catch up the panelists at the panelist lounge. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Happy to do that, but can we first go to Dr. Shah and then we'll take questions? Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Shah.
Ma'am, please conclude the panel. Yeah.
Okay.
Lisa Shah, yeah.
Well, first of all, let me thank the SDPI for giving me this opportunity to chair this really, I think, a very sophisticated panel, a very diverse panel that has really touched upon, really gone into such details on the architecture of finance when it comes to climate change. I'm also sorry for not being present here. We have a very important party meeting. This is called our Central Committee meeting, which is going to actually debate the 27th Amendment. And one of the issues that comes into 27th Amendment is the issue of fiscal subsidiarity. And I'm sure it will have implications on, on financing when it comes to provincial and federal shares. So again, it's an important issue. So we all come under the banner of this roundtable, which is called Baku to Belem, the road ahead for Pakistan's climate finance architecture. I listened to all the the very rich remarks and presentations from all the panelists, and I really feel that as far as my own knowledge goes on this issue, I feel I'm quite an alien or perhaps from another planet. And I think that the conversation that is taking place here is really the level from which really the policymakers, I'm like an experienced parliamentarian. I have I have more than 15 years in the parliament. I am also an elected representative, so I look at the day-to-day politics as well. And really this conversation and where the parliament is at, we're really far behind, really, in terms of our understanding of really what the issues are in terms of, the global and the national debates on financial architecture around the climate change, policies and budgets. But let me talk about the three different stories. So first is like Pakistan's national story. And as we go towards Belem, we'll have a very rich group of, civil society members. We will have some government experts. We may have some parliamentarians, although I was planning to go, and it would have been my first COP30, but sadly, we have this 27th Amendment on our heads. And so I may not be able to make it. But as far as I know, and my reading of this issue and my understanding of it, Pakistan has a fairly good narrative and not just a narrative. Pakistan has also been a leader, particularly COP27. I know that when Honorable Sherry Rahman was the minister, she really, one of the major funds that is around the global climate finance is the Loss and Damage Fund. And Pakistan played a critical role in creating or organizing that Loss and Damage Fund. It's another story on what really has happened to the fund. And as I said, Pakistan has, and also the entire South Asia has a very good victim story. So our story around a country that is being affected in unimaginable ways on climate change, this story is present. It's there in form of images, narratives, and our experiences. And this is the 2022 floods, 2010 floods, 2011 floods, again, the 2025 floods. So there, Pakistan has a narrative, and Pakistan, as I said, has been almost like a global leader in, formulating policies around the finance architecture on this issue, particularly COP27. Nationally speaking, I think we've done a fairly good job with the NDCs. We've made a coherent case. We've come up with numbers, and we've come up with, looking at some of the presentations made today, particularly from the banking sector, I was very impressed to see the kind of, sophisticated policies that are in place, whether it's State Bank, SECP, and the green taxonomy and so many initiatives. So all that is quite impressive. Global narrative, the global narrative actually, again, the global narrative is all, the global noise around this issue or the conversation is the COPs. And the COPs are, again, sites where this North-South politics plays out, but it's also, where there's this whole global global civil society-driven agenda around climate change, which is, again, very vibrant, very political, very charged, and I got some sense of it even today and some conversations I have. However, with both these two narratives, one at the global level, one at the national level, there is a huge gap. And as a policymaker, I can, say it because what I see on the ground, as someone who spends half my time in federal capital, where I hear very impressive conversations like this, and half my time in a constituency that was in water for nearly 60 days or 2 months in 2022, where I witnessed disasters so close that today also I have nightmares when I look at the 2022 floods and what I, as a public representative, had to go through. In that emergency, I would have around my house every day, hundreds and hundreds of people just wanting nothing but a glass of water or a ration bag. So we were intimately connected, and the first response, the government was so far away. The provincial government was far away, but the national government was non-existent when we faced that disaster. It was me as a local representative and our local chairman. And we were the ones who really had to face the first emergencies. And the finances and everything, it came out of our own pockets. It came out of people's pockets. So that's how, when emergencies come, the immediacy of emergency is something that I don't know what we are discussing today really resolves. And that is something that even today is a major, major issue. I saw that happening in Punjab, So the local story, today also we have in Khairpur, in my constituency, it's a wasteland. And still, since 2022 floods, we've really not been able to restore our geographic our infrastructure, or the geography of the area. We're still silted up. There are many areas still under the water. So the real story is really happening where we as policymakers interact with the people. And I would have to say that despite the sophistication in conversation, both at the national and the global level, very little of it today, even today, has trickled down to the local level. There are positive stories. And as we go to Belem, I would like all of you to really do talk about something positive that has happened in Sindh, at least, which is that Sindh government has built 2 million, or is in the process of building 2 million resilient housing structures to compensate for those who were displaced. So, that, and I don't know how the funding, because I know that the loss and damage fund that was, pledged to Pakistan was never realized. I don't know how they've done it, but it's a story that we can take forward. So going forward, as a policymaker, I'm going to talk about some gaps that we really have to, move towards. We all know that the global conversation or the global pledges have not been realized. I don't even know in percentages. It is so minuscule. You would, as experts, know that none of this has really materialized. And as we go to Belem, I don't know how much there will be a lot of negotiation, but I don't know how much of this pledge will really come to Pakistan. So should Pakistan wait for, the 33% in our NDCs, or should we focus on that 17% that we said we will take from our own resources? Now, for that, for the NDCs to be realized locally, which is as a policymaker, whatever my experience has been on global lending, and I think one of the big issues today was that when the global West or the global North pledges something, it's often in form of loans. And those loans take away 60-70% of what is given, and the rest we are stranded with these huge loans which we cannot repay, and then we have these stabilization programs. So I'm not particularly interested as a policymaker in what comes from the West, but I'm very interested in what we can raise today from our own resources, because that is something certain, that is what I have. But for that to be realized, we really need to overcome a lot of policy gaps. And I'm going to name 4 or 5 of these, and then I'll conclude. So the first of these is, of course, the governance gap. We have laws in place, and I think there's sufficient laws. Previously, we have the environmental protection laws. I don't know what happened to those, but now we have this Climate Change Act, and that has a very important climate council, which is headed by none other than the Prime Minister. Now, we need to ask how many times they have really met. What kind of political commitments have these leaders made? It also involves the chief ministers of all the 4 provinces. So, that again, as I said, there's a huge governance gap. And then financially or budgetary, what really are the promises that the government is making going forward? So the NDCs in one place, and then our budgets and our political commitments and governance commitments in the other. And that's really a governance gap that, as a policymaker, I'm concerned with, which I could ask, in the parliament. The second issue for implementation of these climate change policies is the disconnect between the provinces and the center. And today, one of the things that we are discussing is how provincial shares, it's the provinces that are really the implementing arm of the federation. If the provincial shares are going to be taken away, then what are we talking about in terms of, I know that the banks are making all these nice policies, but let me tell you, my own experience of banking in the local areas is that the banks, the only lending that is taking place for the rural displaced communities are very high interest rate microfinance loans. I have not seen any lending by any banks on any anything that could lead to mitigation, to climate mitigation. I have not seen it realized. I have myself been very actively interacting with the banks, but the banks do not lend. without covering of risks, and we all know that. And Pakistan's really financial infrastructure is that the banks have mostly lended to the governments and hardly to the people. So the provincial national disconnect, and then with this this NFC award being under debate, the challenge is again that the provinces may land with lesser funds than they do, and that is again going to have implications. But also that what the NDCs are doing, how does it translate into the local, the provincial implementation, and that disconnect will also have implication. The third point that I wanted to bring is again the parliament. And I told you that we are really far behind from the conversation that you're taking place. Parliaments have two very important powers. One is the power of the purse. I don't know to what extent we have lobbied to have the parliament question the government on when we do the medium-term budgetary framework, to what extent the climate resilience funding is ensured. So that is one question. I'm not in the committee of the climate change, but I can say safely that this is not really central to our conversations in the parliament. The second point that parliament has is oversight. Our climate change committee is headed by Honorable Munazza Hassan. I'm not sure if she's around in these this meeting, but it would be interesting to see what she has to say. But I'm sure she's playing an important role in the oversight. But we are not looking at post-legislative scrutiny. So that is something that we could do going forward. Budget strategy paper. So Parliament has a lot of things that we could do. But again, perhaps there is we need to, as I said, the policymaker as parliamentarians, we're a little behind, and perhaps the civil society needs to reach out, or we need to have more of these interactions so that we can take in some of these ideas and make some changes. We have recently, okay, let me conclude. Recently, we have started looking at the budget in the National Assembly closely, so we can. And finally, two more important issues: political disconnect. How many political parties are talking about climate change in terms of numbers and policies? That's something that we could look at going forward. And finally, the most important part which we are missing is the local governance. In Pakistan today, the local governance is in a disarray, and none of these, the financial mobilization will actually trickle down unless the local government infrastructure is not in place. So thank you very much for your patience. And I hope that I was able to put in or give a reality check to some of the.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Very insightful remarks, and very well concluded the panel as well. We just take, although we have exceeded the time, but there are so many youth who are interested in this topic, and we have a lot of requests for that. So we are just taking brief 2 questions from the panelists, and then we will just end the session. Yeah. If you hand over the mic.
I believe I'm audible enough for the.
No, it's for the online speaker as well.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Zubaida Basi. Thank you so very much for your insightful discussions. Given the pretext of sustainable development in energy in emerging world, I wonder basically the banking entities ever thought of considering financing the NPPs, nuclear power plants, because they are the biggest source of clean, green, and sustainable energies in entire world. And energy is something which runs our lives, which runs the entire world. Tackling fossil fuels, tackling this, that, whatever it is, everything, just get to one point, energy. I wonder whether it's NPPs, and if in that case, NPPs, can we just, imagine it?
Okay, thank you. We can take one more question. If you have any, is there anyone, or you wanted to respond or not?
I won't touch the financing bit because I think the banks are here. But Zubaida, thank you very much for that. What may look like clean green energy is actually not, till you have a nuclear disaster. And then that is centuries of cleaning up and many, many impacts. So I think this is an oversimplification to say that nuclear is clean. Pakistan is blessed with a very high solar albedo. So you have unlimited solar energy that the country can benefit from, is benefiting from. Look at the rooftop solar that you have. And Pakistan now has 50 gigawatts of cumulative capacity that they've just added. You have the most beautiful wind corridors that also offer a lot of, is an untapped potential. If you co-locate your thermal power plants with any of these renewable energy, you can stabilize the load. You actually have an untapped huge resource of truly clean green energy rather than talking about nuclear. So leaving aside the national security and other security considerations, I love your youthful optimism of, why can't we finance nuclear power plants? But I'm not sure if I went to the Bank of Punjab and said I want a nuclear power plant.
Yeah, financing is no problem. So and there are we do produce nuclear energy in Pakistan already. We are a nuclear power, and there are multiple uses of nuclear energy, as you know. So apart from the national security issue, banks have no issue in financing any kind of power project. In fact, the Bank of Punjab has financed currently, I think, over 700 megawatts of clean energy through various projects, power projects.
If government and in front of Ms. Shah, if governments ever
I would request if you can do it in the panelist lounge, because we are running out of time. We conclude on 2 p.m., but it's 2:15 p.m. now.
will you be able to consider that?
I think he will respond on the T as well.
Let me just give us some glimmer of hope. I mean, that's not very helpful. I mean, as you heard, that there is the conversation around large-scale nuclear power plants is perhaps a bit problematic, especially in densely populated countries like ours, right? I mean, the security hazards are quite pronounced and so forth. But you may wish to check some of the work that Mr. Bill Gates is pioneering through his Gates Foundation. And he is actually considering that to be the next breakthrough through modular nuclear power plants, very small nuclear modular power plants. So let's see where that innovation takes us. And if that works out to be a feasible, workable, bankable kind of project, I'm sure the financial sector would be happy to look at that. But that is something we leave to younger generation. Thank you.
But it has to meet minimum social standards as well as do no significant harm.
Exactly.
Yes, you see, and that is the part and parcel of our, Pakistan Green Taxonomy. Yes.
Thank you so much. I think we have a lot of questions. You wanted to add something? No? Okay, thank you so much. We have a lot of questions, and I think you can catch up the panelists outside this area, because we have another session after that. And I would request from Deputy Executive Director of STPI, Dr. Sajid Amin, for the vote of thanks for such an insightful panel and also a great discussion we have today. Yeah, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Salia, giving me the easiest and the most beautiful job to thanking very brilliant people around the table. So let me begin by thanking Dr. Nafisa Shah Sahiba. Dr. Sahiba, thank you so much. And when you are saying that, thank you for being patient and patience, I think this thanks goes back to you actually for listening entirely this discussion, joining us online. Really, really big thanks to you on behalf of GIZ and on behalf of SDPI and all the people here. Thank you so very much. Let me also go to Sobia Becker. She has been the leading voice in climate financing, and GIZ has been the most trusted partner and that SDPI is having. And this discussion would have not been possible without you, Sobia. So thank you to you, and thanks to GIZ. Our friend from Faisal Shafat from State Bank of Pakistan, sir, thank you so much for bringing what is State Bank, and it's really doing very excellent work over the last couple of years, particularly from taxonomy, and I think declaring what is a non-green is the key that the bank is leading. My friend from Bangladesh, Fayaz Murshid Qazi, an ambassador, very thank you so much coming, and I think you have spoken more panels than me in this, and all we're really struggling that what is your specialty. You begin with that I'm not expert, And then you turn at the excellent expert. Thank you so much. And the friend from the Bank of Punjab, Arslan Saab, thank you so much. And I think one bank that Pakistan has to look towards in terms of innovation, in terms of taking the leads on the issues. So Bank of Punjab is really that one bank. And my thanks to all of you staying here, listening us, and to the team of Dr. Khalid, Saleha, and all people around here bringing us the camera, water, tea. So big thanks to all of you. Just 2 points. Climate sensitive fiscal planning, that I think was the message. When the funding is dying, globally funding, I think the domestic climate sensitive fiscal planning will be the key. And another point lastly came from the banks as well, that there is no need, demand, sorry. We need to push on the demand. But I think another point that also Dr. Fayaz also mentioned, there is also a dearth of instruments meeting the needs of the clients. So we need to work both while to catalyze the demand and also to develop the instruments which meet the need of the clients. So big thanks to all of you, Salia. You did so good job. I hope I haven't taken too much time.
Thank you.
Back
Thank
to
you so much. Thank you. May I request all the panelists and Dr. Sajid, please come for the group photo. Yeah.